Ms. Radewagen, you're now recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My question is for Mr. Gonzalez, and yes, I welcome you as well. Thank you very much, all of you, panel, for appearing today. You mentioned in your written statement that all 50 states have now passed some form of new licensing and credentialing laws. Does this include the United States territories? And also, could you please go into more detail as to what these new laws are and how they will increase consistency across the states and territories for service members and veterans trying to obtain certain credentials?
I cannot talk to the U.S. territories. I'm not aware of the laws, if they have been changed, or the statutes in any U.S. territories. But within the 50 states, some type of credentialing current statutes have been changed, and it varies from state to state. So you might have something as simple as how an electrician gets their licensures, and of course in the state of Georgia versus the state of Washington, who might just have complete control and says, we're just going to make one massive overhaul, versus some states who want to do it in increment processes or increment progression to ensure that they're not compromising the public safety in some capacity. I know in one of the states that we've been doing it very slowly, and it's my home state of New York. It's been very much a slow process. Whereas, again, you have some Midwestern states like Indiana, like Washington, Ohio, who has just done one massive overhaul. Of course, Iowa as well as another state. So it depends. But as far as U.S. territories, I'm not aware of. I can go back and come back with with the actual information for you, ma'am.
I appreciate that. You also discuss how only certain occupational licenses are reached by federal law, but many, including nursing, paramedics, etc., are regulated at the state level. For these certain occupational licenses, what can we do in Congress to ensure a consistency of protocols all across the states? And of course, I'm going to say the U.S. territories.
I would
part
think,
of the family.
If it's okay with you, ma'am, I think my colleagues who might be a little better versed on some of that and better answer that question, I don't know if they want to answer, since I have two of the biggest accreditation bodies here who can actually also give you that understanding. And of course, some of those particular topics are very much hybrid in nature, where the federal government does have a role, but then of course the states also have their own role.
Okay, if we could
I don't know
go
if anyone
to the,
wants to, or
I'm running out of time. Thank you.
Well, licensure is a difficult issue because it is state, and frankly, scopes of practice are done by the legislature, and it's a political process about who can lobby the best. And that's why you have differences among states in regard to scope, and some people can administer medication and some can't, and this is true for a lot of, and then some states may license a dental hygienist and some not, and it's the whole range of how you interpret what public protection is all about, because licensure is supposed to be strictly about public protection, and there are several issues associated with this. First of all, licensure is based on the whole idea that scope of practice is mutually exclusive from anybody else. So if you say wound healing in one scope, God help you, if you're another profession who says, well, we look at wounds too, you know, and of course the workforce is not going that way of having these boundaries of scopes. And so that's why I think it's very difficult for the federal government, because it is very state controlled. Now the federations, like the state boards of nursing and physical therapy, psychologists, they try to bring some standardization, but even the nurses, who are very, very active in trying to create a compact of mutual recognition across borders, I think don't quote me on this, but I think they're around 30. But you would think they would have all 51 states, you know, in looking at this sort of thing. So it's difficult. I think that the recent initiative by the Department of Labor to look at giving grants in relationship to how we can better facilitate these barriers with licensure is a good start. To force the states to begin looking about, do we really license this profession, or is this just a barrier that we put up that's really not necessary?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Ms. Radewagen, you're now recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to thank the panel for appearing today. Mr. DiGiovanni, what do you see as the biggest impediment to achieving better cohesion between military training and civilian licenses and credentials? It seems to me that it might be easier for the states and territories to try to conform to one similar standard for popular licenses and credentials than to have DoD try to adjust training and procedure for a variety of different state standards.
So our approach has been primarily market-driven. So one of the things that we've asked anyone who's asked or anyone we've talked to from industry is, you know, what is the golden certification? What is the golden licensure? So that we can advise military members that if you're seeking a career, say in metalworking or in truck driving, which is pretty simple, you obviously need a CDL, but one of these kind of manufacturing or logistics, what is the certification that if a military member walked into your HR office and you laid that on the table, that would be exactly the certification they're looking for. So from our perspective, we're looking for, again, this information, but this time toward the department to help better inform our military members what certifications and licensures matter, particularly in the kinds of jobs that they're looking for. And so I think we're also not really trying to, the military to date has not taken on the task of trying to do the gap training themselves. They do have a military requirement, and then they train and educate those military service members to the specific requirements of the department. And then what we've done is then provide them with information mechanisms to find out what the gaps are, and then help them locate where they can get those gaps filled. And so it's kind of been that process and also that demand-driven process. What's the marketplace looking for as far as licensure and credentials?
Thank you. Ms. Girton, it's nice to see you again. Understanding the results of the NGA study on credentialing are not final, but what are other steps that you think we should take to incentivize states and the territories to pass laws and regulations that account for skills and training that service members already have when looking at licensing and credentialing standards?
So I think there are a number of initiatives already on the table. The interim report is out there, and it does lay out in draft form the blueprint that Mr. Quam talked about. And we would certainly encourage those of you on the committee to take the report back to your home states and share those results, as we have already posted it out to the state workforce agencies so that they can begin working on it. Career pathways and job-driven training are a huge focus of the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act. I think that there is an opportunity here for us to continue the types of grants that TACT and Ready to Work and some of the other labor grants represent that encourage innovation in this space and encourage the development of innovation, particularly course curricula as a result of the TACT grants that is shared in the public domain, so that other folks who wanted to pick that curriculum up already have it written. That is a prerequisite of the TACT grants. I think there's that, and I think another key piece is increasing the capacity in the workforce system to do this kind of counseling and training, because to answer one of Representative Takano's earlier questions about the cost of credentialing, some of those costs are already covered in the public workforce system, and we don't need to replicate those costs. We can, by referring folks through the public workforce system, have some of their training paid for, some of their cost in credentialing paid for, and have individual counseling for them that helps them leverage the variety of these different kinds of tools. That's especially critical for veterans as we approach this issue.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back the balance of my time.